Hello, my name is Leslie, and for this video I'm going to go over my general thought process when drawing eyes digitally, like on Photoshop or other digital programs. I adapted this technique after taking classes with Patrick Jones. He's a well-known traditional illustrator, fantasy illustrator, so if you don't know him, I highly suggest you check him out. So now I'm going to go over things I do or try to avoid when drawing eyes to get a somewhat natural look. I wanted to come up with a way to have like a look closer to traditional art. It doesn't really look traditional, but it has that kind of like feel to it, if that makes sense. I'm trying to find something in between. I'm always like working with this and trying different brushes, so I might come up with something like later with a new technique, but this is just what I do currently. I usually start off with a circle because eyes are eyeballs and balls spherical, so yeah. I do that, and then I draw on the eyelids, and the spheres that I initially drew, they help me get the form right for the eyeballs. Then after that, I draw the structure for the nose and then the structure for the brow bridge. After that, I draw the eyebrows, and yeah, all of that stuff, like the structure is just to get the form right and to make it look more 3D later when I get to the final rendering. Then after I get the basic structure down, I'll smudge it and then make it more faint with the eraser tool, and then I'll go in with more detail. That's just something I do throughout the entire process, where I just like knock it back, make it lighter, and then add more detail. I'll gradually increase the opacity of the brush just to make it darker and make the brush smaller also, and then just keep going back and forth until I'm happy with it. So after most of everything is smudged, then I'll erase the areas that have light hitting it. This helps me get the different forms right for the features, like the lids, nose, lips, etc. Another thing I do is wait to add highlight until the end. I make sure that the shadows and the form of the objects are intact so I don't get too distracted by the lights, since they greatly impact the overall image, so I'll usually just save those until the end. So there's a couple of areas that took me a while to approach, which are the bottom lid, inner corner of the eye, and eyelashes. And when I say approach, I mean like ways to make it look like the actual thing, if that makes sense. Like make the bottom lid actually look like a bottom lid, and make the lashes look like lashes instead of like a random like black line on the top and bottom of the eye. So yeah, I'll go into those. For the lower lid, I like to make sure that there's enough space on the top plane so it looks 3D or more realistic. I feel like that's a big thing that a lot of beginners, including myself, really missed out on, is making sure that different objects have a thickness to it instead of just thinking of like the flat 2D plane. Okay, so going on to the next area, when it comes to the inner corner, I try not to add dark values in that area. So I'll just erase it if I draw over that area at the beginning. And then if it's not under the shadow from the nose or the brow bridge, then I make sure that that part is completely erased, and I'll save that for when I do the highlights. So the other thing I like to keep in mind is that the top eyelashes come out from the front of the lid. Basically, eyelashes curl, and I like to indicate that curve when I draw eyelashes. For some of the finishing touches, I like to make sure that the irises or the colored part of the eye are blurred a little bit. And not the whole thing, but mainly the edges where they meet the cornea. And finally, I add the highlights at the end. So I like to start off with a value that's slightly lighter than the base value that I started with. So I'll lay that down and then blur it, and then I'll start picking different areas to add more of the lighter value to. So usually I save like the lightest values for the tip of the nose, and then the second lightest value is kind of like the corner of the eyes, and then the cheeks. And then after that, it's the top of the brow, and then the eyelids and the chin is usually the order depending on where the light source is. When it comes to like soft versus hard edges for the highlights, I like to make sure the cheeks and the brows are really faded in or blended in. And then when it comes to the eyelids, like the bottom lid is especially, and then the corners, the inner corners of the eye and the very tip of the nose, I like to make sure that's really like sharp and has like a hard edge to it. So moving on, more recently I learned that the tonal value of the cornea, like the white part of the eye, is similar to the surrounding skin value. So I try not to make that like really bright white. If you compare it to the white I added for the highlight, you can notice how much darker it is than white. And yeah, those are kind of like my tips and tricks for drawing eyes. I feel like there's a lot of room to grow, so hopefully later on I can come up with something different just to help, and then maybe do like a more concrete eye tutorial. Hope you enjoy. If you like it, please give it a like. Please subscribe for more videos, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.